Get out of my house, both of you. Victor Harrington's voice exploded across the marble foyer, echoing off the crystal chandeliers as the maid, Althea, wrapped her arm protectively around her teenage son. You think your boy can touch my daughter? You think you belong in this world? His face was red, fists clenched, voice trembling with a fury that only comes when power feels threatened. Althea didn't flinch, but Isaiah, barely 18, looked like he'd been slapped, not by Victor's words, but by what they meant. They were nothing. Disposable. Replaceable. Dirt. The household staff froze. No one dare move. Even the gate guards paused, unsure if they were supposed to physically escort them out. But just as Victor's hand reached for the door to throw them out himself, a soft voice called from the grand staircase. Dad, I'm pregnant. Time stopped. Victor turned. Althea gasped. Isaiah's eyes widened in horror. And standing halfway down the staircase, dressed in a trembling silk robe, was Arabella Harrington, the billionaire's only daughter, the heiress, the golden girl. Tears welled in her eyes, but her voice held. I'm pregnant, and it's Isaiah's. The champagne flute slipped from Claire Harrington's hand, shattering into diamond-like shards against the floor. She stared at the ultrasound photo, now trembling in Arabella's hands. Black and white, grainy, yet impossibly loud. It didn't feel real, even though the proof was there. From across the room, Victor's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Tell me this is some kind of sick joke. Arabella shook her head. I love him. I'm not hiding it. And I'm not getting rid of it. Victor didn't scream this time. He didn't have to. His silence was lethal. Claire's mouth was dry. Her fingers trembled, but she said nothing. Not yet. And in that moment, surrounded by shattered glass, broken lines, and two teenagers whose love had defied every rule of class, color, and power, one question hung in the air. How far would a family go to erase the shame of a love they never saw coming? If your child fell in love with someone your entire world looks down on, would you defend them or deny them? Be honest. Comment below. We're listening. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now, let us begin. 6 months earlier, the Harrington estate sat like a crown jewel atop the hills of Pacific Ridge, 12 bedrooms, a private lake, 2 tennis courts, and a vineyard that no one in the family ever walked through. Inside, the floors were warm marble, the walls dressed in priceless art, and the silence always suffocating. Arabella Harrington lived in a glass cage. Every hour of her day was scripted: ballet lessons at 9, horseback riding at 11, a private French tutor at 1. Her mother, Claire, had designed Arabella's life with military precision. It was safe, elegant, controlled, but none of it ever felt real. She never belonged to the world she was born into. Victor Harrington, her father, was a man of exacting standards, a self-made billionaire who believed in legacy, discipline, and image. Born to poverty, he clawed his way up Wall Street, swallowing men twice his size until he stood alone at the top. His rules were unspoken but absolute. Don't embarrass me. Don't get soft. And never trust anyone who needs you. That's how Victor viewed the help. People like Althea Brooks, the black maid who'd worked at the estate for 8 years. A woman who moved through rooms like a shadow. Efficient, invisible, always watching, always listening. She had one reason to be there: her son, Isaiah. Isaiah was 17 when he moved in with his mother after his father passed. He didn't speak much at first. He kept his head down, swept floors, organized silverware, fixed broken lights. He was polite, soft-spoken, but there was a quiet intensity to him, the kind that made people underestimate him until it was too late. Arabella noticed him the first time he picked up her sketchbook after she dropped it near the koi pond. You draw? He asked, flipping through delicate pencil drawings of faces, flowers, skies cracked with lightning. No, she snapped. Not really. But he didn't laugh. You're lying. You're good. Like really good. It was the first time anyone had seen her, and not the name stitched to her soul. She never forgot that moment. They began to cross paths more. Brief glances, stolen smiles. Words slipped through cracks when no one was looking. He never treated her like she was porcelain or prize. And somewhere between midnight walks in the garden and whispered poetry in the greenhouse, Arabella realized something terrifying. She was falling in love. But love like theirs, it wasn't allowed. Claire had noticed something changing in her daughter. Her eyes softer, her walls thinner. At first, she thought it was hormones, the beginning of teenage moods. But one morning, as she watched Arabella from the top of the staircase, something clicked. She was looking at someone with hope. And Claire remembered what hope had cost her. Once upon a time, Claire had been a dancer. Poor, fearless, wild. Victor had been her miracle, rich, older, obsessed. He swept her off her feet and locked her inside a castle. At first, it was magic, but soon, love turned into duty and laughter into silence. She traded her dreams for status, her freedom for order. Now, she spent her days planning galas, giving interviews, and maintaining the image of the perfect wife. And her nights? Mostly alone. Victor worked late. Always. Claire had sacrificed everything for the Harrington name, and she wasn't about to let her daughter throw it all away over a boy who polished silver. Althea Brooks had seen more of the Harringtons than they realized. She'd cleaned Victor's lipstick-stained collars. She'd heard the slamming doors, the crying through walls, the phone calls that ended with silence. But she kept her mouth shut until she saw the way Isaiah looked at Arabella. It scared her. He was a good boy, but he didn't know how dangerous love could be when it threatened power. She warned him, "They'll never accept you." "I'm not trying to be accepted," he said. "I'm just trying to matter." She looked at him with a sadness deeper than he could understand. "They'll break you." It was a Thursday when Arabella snuck into the servant wing, barefoot, trembling, her phone buzzing with threats from a school bully who'd leaked photos of her drawing Isaiah. She was spiraling, feeling more alone than ever. Isaiah found her crying outside the laundry room. He didn't ask questions. He just sat beside her, offered a hoodie, and let her cry. That night, for the first time, she told him everything about her father's coldness, her mother's silence, the pressure to be perfect, and the way his presence made it all quieter. Isaiah kissed her that night, gently, respectfully, like she wasn't a Harrington, like she was just Arabella. What happened after that was messy, unplanned, but it was real. And 3 weeks later, she felt the first flutter of nausea. Arabella bought the pregnancy test herself. She cried alone in the guest house bathroom. Her world fractured quietly. When Isaiah found out, he offered to leave, to take the fall, to run away. But she said no. "This is our story," she whispered. "No more hiding." They had a plan. Arabella would wait until the first trimester passed. Then she'd tell her mother, gently, privately. But secrets don't cooperate with timing. Not when Victor's accountant found strange charges on her card. Not when Claire saw her throw up in the guest bathroom. Not when the household nurse noticed the missed periods and reported it directly to Victor. And so, back to the present. Victor was done pretending. Claire was silent. Arabella was shaking. And Isaiah? He stood his ground, even as the world caved in. He refused to apologize. "I love her," he said, "and I won't let you shame her for that." Victor's hand twitched toward his security staff. But then Claire stepped forward. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Don't," she said. "Not yet." Victor turned. "Claire, not now." She stared at Arabella, then at Isaiah, and something deep inside her, something that had been buried for 2 decades, cracked open. She remembered being 17. She remembered being in love with a man everyone said wasn't worthy. And she remembered what it cost her to lose him. She didn't speak yet, but she was no longer silent. Victor Harrington's private study was built like a fortress. Walnut-paneled walls, no windows, and a 10-inch steel lock on the door. It wasn't designed for meetings. It was designed for war. Claire stood at the far end of the room, arms crossed, watching her husband pace like a caged beast. "She's not talking to me," he growled. "She's refusing to listen. Our daughter, our only child, is ruining her life over the maid's son, and you're just going to stand there?" Claire's voice was cool, calculated. Yelling won't change that she's pregnant. Victor stopped pacing. His eyes narrowed. I'm having them removed by morning. Althea and the boy. Quietly. With a payout, if necessary. And you're going to talk to Arabella and remind her that abortions are legal in this state. Claire blinked. She's 16 weeks. Victor shrugged. Not my concern. In the kitchen, whispers spread like wildfire. The driver knew. The gardener knew. The head chef had already called his cousin, who ran a gossip blog. Half the staff were texting under the table. By sunset, the rumors would leave the estate. At the center of the chaos sat Arabella, in the sunroom, knees pulled to her chest, staring blankly at the fire pit her father installed for Instagrammable family photos they never took. Isaiah sat next to her, not touching, not speaking. Just there. I ruined everything, she whispered. He'll never forgive me. Isaiah's jaw clenched. You didn't ruin anything. They just never gave you room to be real. Arabella turned her face toward him. He's going to make you leave. Isaiah looked away. I won't go unless you tell me to. That night at 10:03 p.m., the Ridgeview Gazette broke a blind item story. Pacific Billionaire's daughter rumored to be expecting a child by household staff. Sources claim internal conflict has erupted inside the estate. Within minutes, it was reposted, screenshotted, shared. By morning, it would be national. Victor stormed into the dining room, holding the newspaper like it was on fire. Do you have any idea what this means for our legacy? The shareholders? The press? Arabella stood. This isn't a scandal. It's my life. Victor slammed his fist on the table. You're a property, Arabella. You're my legacy. You don't get to play poor girl romance with the help. Isaiah stepped forward, calm but firm. I'm not the help. I'm the father of her child. The room held its breath. Victor turned. You think that gives you power here? You think because you slept with her that you matter? Isaiah didn't flinch. No, I think I matter because I love her, and I'm not afraid of you. Victor stared at him, then, without warning, raised his hand. But Claire stepped between them. Try it, she said. Her voice wasn't raised. It didn't need to be. Lay one hand on him. Just one. And I will bury you in headlines you'll never recover from. Victor's hand trembled in the air, then slowly dropped to his side. Victor stormed out, grabbing his phone. Claire stayed behind, wrapping her arms around Arabella for the first time in weeks. Isaiah stood still, his chest rising and falling, eyes locked on the door. I told you, she whispered, folding Isaiah's shirts into a duffel bag. I told you this would end in fire. Isaiah shook his head. I'm not walking away from her. Althea looked up. You think love is enough to stand in a room full of wolves? You think this family will ever see you as anything more than a stain? He didn't answer. I raised you better than this, Isaiah. I raised you to survive, not get eaten alive. He looked her in the eye. Then trust me to survive this too. The next morning, Victor called an emergency family council. The board, the PR team, his brother-in-law, the attorney. His plan was swift. Fire Althea and Isaiah. Send Arabella to Europe for art therapy. Spin the story as a mental health crisis. Quietly arrange for a termination under private care. Re-establish narrative control before the quarterly earnings call. But when he presented the plan to Claire, she did something no one expected. She said no, and then she handed him a letter, already drafted, already signed. It was her official separation request. Victor read the letter in stunned silence. You're leaving me? I'm choosing my daughter, Claire replied. He blinked. For the first time in 20 years, Victor Harrington looked genuinely lost. You'd burn this empire to the ground for him? Claire leaned in. No, for her. For the daughter you forgot was a person, not an investment. But that wasn't even the worst of it. Later that afternoon, as the family tried to regroup, another bomb dropped, this time via social media. Arabella posted a photo of her ultrasound on her private Instagram with a caption. This is our story, not your scandal, not your headline. You don't have to approve. You just have to accept that love isn't yours to gatekeep. Within an hour, it had 140,000 likes. Within 2 hours, the tabloids knew exactly who the father was. Within 5, journalists camped outside the estate gates. Victor had lost control. Shares dipped 7%. The company's name trended on Twitter for all the wrong reasons. Board members were whispering about stability, succession, and scandal fatigue. Victor realized something terrifying. This wasn't just a family problem anymore. This was a corporate crisis. And for the first time, he was the liability. When someone in power tries to silence truth for the sake of legacy, who should step in first? Family, friends, or the public? Drop your tape below. Let's talk about it. 2 days later, the estate had gone cold. The reporters outside the gates were relentless, but inside the walls of the Harrington home, a deeper, quieter war was taking place. One made of locked doors, unread messages, and footsteps that avoided each other like landmines. Victor had moved into the guest wing. Claire didn't speak unless she had to. Arabella rarely came out of her room except to see Isaiah in the servants' quarters, a place she now called the only place that feels like Earth. But while the house froze, the internet did not. Arabella's post had gone viral. A slow-burning wildfire. Hashtag love is not scandal. Hashtag Arabella speaks. Hashtag Harrington Air. Public sentiment was torn. Half the world cheered for her courage. The other half accused her of rebellion, foolishness, naivety. Victor had never been more humiliated, and he wasn't going to take it quietly. Victor met with his crisis team in a hotel downtown. What they uncovered shocked even him. Althea Brooks, the maid, had been on payroll for 9 years, and during that time, she had never taken a single vacation. Not one. But what the team also found was a string of wire transfers, small but frequent, from Althea's account to someone in New Orleans. Victor demanded answers. The investigator hesitated. Sir, she's been supporting someone in a halfway house. A woman named Eloise Kane. Former addict. Age 38. Turns out, that's your wife's half-sister. Victor blinked. Claire has a sister? Yes, sir. Estranged. Hidden. And it seems Althea's been paying to keep her afloat. Victor's world tilted. Not just because Althea had known more than he realized, but because Claire had lied to him. For years, he drove home in silence. Inside the estate, Claire was in the garden, her hands in the soil, her pearls tucked into a drawer. Her mask finally cracked. He confronted her softly. Why didn't you tell me about Eloise? Claire didn't look up. Because you would have used her. She's your blood. She's my burden, Claire whispered. And I made peace with that. But Althea didn't. She helped her when I couldn't. When I was too ashamed to. Victor's voice turned sharp. So the maid knew more about your family than your husband? Claire finally stood. The maid has more humanity than you ever pretended to have. She and Isaiah sat in the guest house that night, wrapped in a single blanket, the world outside buzzing with headlines. Arabella stared at the firelight flickering across Isaiah's face. Do you ever think this was a mistake? Isaiah didn't answer right away. You mean us? She nodded. He looked at her, eyes soft. Only when I remember what they think of me. Not when I'm with you. Arabella hesitated. Then, do you know who your father was? Silence. Isaiah shifted. No, my mom never talks about him. Said he left before I was born. Said knowing wouldn't help me. Arabella looked down at her hands. That's what they say about me too, that I shouldn't know the whole story. But I'm tired of being protected from everything. Isaiah smiled faintly. Then let's stop waiting. The next morning, Arabella slipped into her mother's study. She'd never been allowed in there alone. But something had shifted between them since the reveal, an unspoken alliance. A shared pain. Inside a locked drawer, Arabella found a thin folder labeled Brooks. Curious, she opened it, and what she found made her legs go weak. Inside were letters. Dozens of them, all addressed to Claire, all from Althea, going back 17 years. Letters that told a story no one had ever spoken aloud. Claire, I never meant for that night to happen. I never meant for him to come to me when you were gone. He was drunk. You were in Europe. I was a fool. But the child, he is innocent. I kept quiet because I didn't want to destroy you. He doesn't know. Isaiah doesn't know. And I'll take this to my grave if you want me to. But you deserve to know. You were my friend once. Arabella's hands trembled. She couldn't breathe. Isaiah was her half-brother? No, that couldn't be real. It didn't make sense. Claire and Althea had always been distant, but cordial. But this was betrayal beyond anything. That night, Arabella cornered Claire in the hallway. "Is it true?" she whispered. "Isaiah, is he Dad's son?" Claire froze. Tears welled in her eyes. "Where did you?" "I read the letters." Claire didn't deny it. She sat down. Pale. Small. "I was pregnant with you when it happened. Your father and I were broken. Althea had been hired just months before. I went to Paris for a gala. When I came back, he was different. Guilty. Cold." Arabella stared. "And you let her stay?" Claire nodded slowly. "She begged me not to fire her. She didn't want pity. She wanted to protect him. And the baby. And I didn't have the strength to burn it all down." Arabella walked outside, into the garden, the stars above her burning like 1,000 truths. She found Isaiah sitting on the fountain wall, sketching something in his notebook. She sat beside him, quiet. He looked at her, sensing something was wrong. "I found something," she said. "About your father." Isaiah stiffened. Arabella whispered, "I think he might have been mine too." A long silence. He didn't react, didn't cry, didn't shout, just stared at the water, then said, "Then I guess that explains a lot." Arabella was shaking. "I'm sorry. I don't even know if it's true. But," Isaiah stood up, "it's not your fault. But it's not just our story anymore." The next morning, Isaiah confronted his mother. She didn't deny it. Tears fell silently as she nodded. "He was powerful. I was nothing. And I hated myself every day for letting it happen. But I loved you. That's the only truth I ever held on to." Isaiah couldn't speak. He simply walked out. He didn't know who he was anymore. But one thing was clear. The Harringtons weren't just hiding a scandal. They were hiding a bloodline. Isaiah didn't sleep that night. He lay awake in the tiny servant's bedroom he once called home, staring at the cracks in the ceiling, hearing his mother's voice echo. He was powerful and I was nothing. His chest felt like it had been caved in. Every memory, every walk with Arabella, every kiss, was now laced with one horrific possibility. She might be his sister. And worse, Victor Harrington, the man who had humiliated him, hated him, and tried to erase him, might be his father. Claire had begged her not to say anything yet. "We need to confirm it," she said. "Let me get a DNA test arranged discreetly. Don't panic. It may not be what it looks like." But Arabella had already cracked. Her walls, the carefully constructed fortress of privilege, silence, and control, were crumbling. She couldn't eat. She couldn't breathe. Every time she looked at Isaiah, she saw the man she loved and possibly the brother she was never supposed to know. They stopped touching, stopped talking. What was once intimacy became distance wrapped in dread. He called a press conference. Damage control, he called it. It was staged outside the Harrington Foundation offices. Dozens of cameras, rows of chairs, a statement in hand. Claire begged him not to do it. "Victor, this will only pour gasoline on a burning house. If you try to control the narrative now, it's going to backfire." But he didn't listen. At exactly 11 a.m., Victor stepped up to the microphone. "There's been a great deal of speculation regarding my daughter and a young man who was once employed at our family estate. I want to be clear. My family stands for integrity, legacy, and responsibility. We will not be manipulated by emotional entanglements or forced into acknowledging relationships that were never permitted. My daughter is young, and she made a mistake. But we intend to handle it privately, with dignity." He didn't name Isaiah, but he didn't have to. He called the love a mistake. He erased the child growing in Arabella's body. He erased Isaiah, and the press ate it up. As Victor descended from the podium, flashing that corporate smile, a woman emerged from the back of the crowd. Her voice was quiet, but her words nuclear. "Victor Harrington," she said, stepping onto the platform. "Do you remember me?" The cameras turned. She wore a faded red dress, oversized sunglasses, and trembling hands. Claire gasped from home. It was Eloise Kane, Claire's estranged half-sister, the secret buried for decades. And in her hands, she held a birth certificate. Eloise stepped forward and into the mic. "You called your daughter's pregnancy a mistake, but I think the public deserves to know what you've called your other child." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Victor froze. Eloise held up the document. "This is a certified birth certificate naming Victor Harrington as the father of a child born in 2007. That child is Isaiah Brooks. Claire fell into her chair at home. Arabella screamed. The world stopped. Isaiah watched it all from the servants' quarters TV, stunned, breathless, paralyzed. It was real. He was Victor's son, the man who spit on him, the man who tried to erase him. His father. Althea had kept it from him his entire life. The truth felt like poison. She burst into the servant's wing, breathless, trembling. I didn't know she was going to do that. I swear I didn't know. Isaiah was quiet. Too quiet. Isaiah, please say something. He looked up at her, eyes red, voice hollow. You're my sister. She broke. No, we don't know that for sure. Your mother said he was drunk. It might not. It doesn't matter. His voice cracked. It doesn't matter because I don't know what's real anymore. I don't even know who I am. Everything has been a lie. She took a step forward. We can still fix this. We can still. But Isaiah stepped back. I can't even look at you without wondering if I've hurt you. If I've hurt our child. He packed a small bag. He kissed Althea's forehead, silent, with a single tear. He didn't say goodbye to Arabella. He just walked out. The storm that followed felt biblical. Arabella locked herself in her room for days. Claire sat outside the door, whispering stories of her own heartbreak, of the man she loved before Victor, the one she gave up for wealth. I lost everything chasing power. I won't let you do the same. Arabella whispered through the door. But I already lost him. The press turned on him. Board members called for his resignation. His lawyer quit. His sponsors pulled their donations. Stock plummeted. The golden empire began to rot from the inside. But Victor held on until a letter arrived, handwritten, no return address. Inside, you taught me what power looks like, but I learned what love feels like. And I choose love, even if I never see her again. Isaiah Brooks. Victor sat down and cried for the first time in 40 years. When love and truth collide with identity and legacy, what would you choose? Power or peace? Tell us in the comments. Your voice matters here. 2 weeks later, the Harrington estate, once buzzing with staff, security, and soft piano music in every room, was now a hushed mausoleum. The gates remained closed. Reporters had lost interest. The public had moved on to the next scandal. But inside these walls, the silence screamed. Arabella hadn't left her room in 14 days. She wasn't eating. She wasn't sketching. She was barely breathing. The echo of Isaiah's goodbye was everywhere. She still wore his sweatshirt. She still had the sonogram hidden under her pillow. At night, she would press her hand to her growing belly, silently whispering his name, over and over, like a prayer no one would answer. And when she slept, it was only in fragments, always haunted by the image of him turning away, of his voice saying, I can't even look at you. She'd officially filed for separation. She moved into a small guest house behind the vineyard. And every morning, she walked the gravel paths barefoot, searching for something, a sign, a voice, a reason not to drown in the guilt that now lived inside her like cancer. She'd kept the secret. She'd enabled the silence. She'd watched Althea suffer quietly for years and never reached out. And she'd failed Arabella, her own daughter. I thought I was protecting her, Claire whispered one night to no one. But all I did was rob her of the truth. He had officially stepped down as CEO. The board had voted unanimously. His face was wiped from the company website within 48 hours. Stockholders demanded accountability. He gave a press statement, but no apology. He still couldn't bring himself to say the words. I have a son. Not once. He sat in his office, night after night, with a bottle of scotch, the lights off, staring at the old family portrait above the fireplace. A younger Claire, holding baby Arabella, and Althea in the far background. Blurred, faded, but there, always there. The shame cut deeper than failure. In a small studio apartment above a corner mechanic shop, Isaiah Brooks stood staring at a tiny canvas, half-painted, unfinished. He hadn't touched a brush in days. Althea sat behind him, folding laundry in silence. You don't have to stay here, he said quietly. Althea looked up. Where else would I go? Isaiah shrugged. Someplace quieter. Someplace I'm not breaking your heart every time I breathe. She stood, walked to him, and placed a hand over his chest. "You're not breaking my heart," she said. "You're living with one." Arabella felt the changes daily now. She was 5 months along. The bump showed under everything. She hadn't told a single soul about her last OB appointment. She hadn't let Claire come. She hadn't even spoken to Isaiah since the day he left. But when the doctor placed the cold gel on her stomach and the monitor began to buzz, the tears wouldn't stop. She whispered to her child, "You're not a mistake. You are mine, and I'll protect you, even if I'm the only one who will." On a rainy Wednesday afternoon, Claire knocked on the front door of a worn-down building on Ridge Avenue. Inside, Isaiah opened the door, shocked. She looked tired, smaller, unarmed. "Can I come in?" she asked. Isaiah nodded. Inside, Claire didn't sit. She simply looked around, at the cracked walls, the quiet, the painting on the floor of a young girl looking up at a burning house. "Did you love her?" she asked. Isaiah blinked. "What?" "Arabella. Did you love her?" Isaiah swallowed. "Every second." Claire nodded slowly. "I believe you." She reached in her bag and pulled out an envelope. "Don't open this yet," she said. "But when you do, know that the truth wasn't meant to hurt you. It was meant to set you free." She walked out before he could ask anything. Inside the envelope, a DNA test result, and a handwritten letter. Isaiah sat for hours staring at the sealed envelope. His hands shook. He didn't know what he feared more, the truth that he was Victor's son, or that he wasn't. Because both meant loss. Both meant his love with Arabella was either impossible or forever tainted. He opened the letter first. It was from Claire. "I've spent my life erasing women like your mother and silencing girls like my daughter. I thought if I kept everything quiet, no one would get hurt. But you did, and so did Arabella. I don't know what will happen next, but I need you to know she still loves you. And this child you created together, he is not a scandal. He is a miracle, yours to claim or to walk away from. Either way, you are not your father's mistake. You are your mother's courage." Isaiah cried for the first time in years. He still didn't open the DNA test. Not yet, because he had to decide, was he going to live by blood or by love? She had painted the walls soft sage green. It had been Claire's idea. Even through the pain, the betrayal, the fallout, her mother had never left her side since. But Arabella still felt alone, and the silence from Isaiah haunted her like a ghost. Then, one night, a knock on her door. She opened it, and there he was, Isaiah, holding nothing but the envelope. He stepped inside slowly, his voice barely a whisper. "I didn't read it." Arabella stared at him, heart pounding. "Why?" He looked her dead in the eyes. "Because I don't care what it says. I love you. I love this child, and I choose you. Always. Could you forgive someone who shattered your reality? If they were willing to fight for your future? Let us know what forgiveness means to you in the comments. I choose you." 3 words. Soft, unshaken, pure. Isaiah stood in the doorway of Arabella's nursery. The same boy who had once swept floors in her house, now standing tall with the weight of generations behind his eyes. Arabella froze. Her hand gripped the side of the crib, breath caught somewhere between relief and disbelief. "You don't want to know?" she asked, glancing at the unopened DNA test in his hand. Isaiah looked at her. "I already do." She stared, searching his face. "What if we are?" He stepped closer. "Then we'll deal with it. But love isn't blood, and fear doesn't get to decide our future anymore." Tears poured silently down her cheeks. Isaiah reached for her hand and placed it gently on her stomach. "I still want to meet him. Our son. I want to show him what it means to be a man who stays." She didn't intrude. She just stood in the shadows, one hand against the wall, as she heard her daughter's quiet sobs turn into something else. Laughter. Lightness. Life. It had been so long since Arabella had sounded free. Claire closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you." To God. To Isaiah. To the version of herself she never became. He'd moved into a hotel downtown, stripped of power, reputation fading, alone. But he kept one thing from the old house, the original sonogram. He stared at it every night, not as a businessman, not as a patriarch, but as a father, one who had failed both of his children, the one he denied and the one he tried to control. He poured himself a drink, then didn't touch it. Instead, He opened his phone. There, he pulled up a photo taken years ago, a candid moment of Claire and Arabella dancing in the rain. Before it all went wrong. Before silence became a language. And for the first time in months, he called someone. Althea Brooks hadn't seen Victor since the press conference. When she picked up the phone, she expected anger or legal threats. Instead, what she got was quiet. Althea, Victor said, voice hoarse. I know I can't ask you to forgive me. I know I don't deserve anything from you. But I need to say it anyway. Silence on the line. I failed you. I failed our son. I failed everyone who ever trusted me to be better. And if you never speak to me again, I understand. But I'm sorry for what I did, for what I didn't do, for not seeing you when you were standing right in front of me. Althea's eyes welled. And still, she said nothing. But she didn't hang up either. In the weeks that followed, things began to shift. Claire invited Althea over for lunch. Not as staff, as family. Arabella began drawing again. This time, her son curled in soft lines across the page. Isaiah enrolled in art school with a full scholarship. Claire funded it anonymously. And slowly, the family began to rebuild itself. Not in the mansion, not in the headlines, but in the kitchen where laughter returned. In the garden, where Arabella and Claire planted a cherry blossom tree. And in the small nursery, where Isaiah assembled the crib himself, screw by screw, as Arabella watched with her head on his shoulder. It sat untouched for weeks. Isaiah placed it in a drawer, not out of fear anymore, but choice, until one day he pulled it out. He opened it, read it, breathed. Then he burned it, because it didn't change anything. He knew who he was now, not because of who made him, but because of who he chose to be. They held it in the garden. Nothing extravagant, just friends, new and old. No press. Claire cooked. Althea decorated. Isaiah hand-painted the invites. Arabella wore a white sundress and a flower crown. The first time she looked like a girl again, not a headline. And in the middle of the party, Victor showed up. Everyone froze. He walked slowly. No entourage, no arrogance. Just a man, smaller than they remembered, holding a tiny box in both hands. He approached Arabella first. I know I don't deserve a place in your life, he said quietly. But maybe I could earn one of your child's. She didn't answer, but she took the box. Inside, a delicate gold bracelet engraved with a name. Elias, the name Isaiah and Arabella had chosen. Victor had found out and respected it. They weren't perfect. They never would be. But they had changed. Arabella and Isaiah moved into a modest home 2 towns over. Claire visited weekly. Althea came often, sometimes just to hold Elias, and sit quietly by the window. Victor didn't visit much, but he sent letters. Always handwritten, always humble. He was trying, and that mattered. When people truly change, should we open the door to redemption or protect ourselves from being hurt again? What do you believe? Drop your answer below. Someone out there might need your wisdom. 6 months later, the world had moved on. The Harrington scandal had become a footnote, just one more elite family drama buried under newer gossip. But for Arabella and Isaiah, the world had only just begun. Their son, Elias, had been born 2 weeks early, 6 pounds, 4 ounces, wide-eyed and fierce. He had Arabella's soft curls and Isaiah's deep brown eyes. He didn't cry much. He didn't need to. He had love. And for now, that was everything. One afternoon, while Isaiah painted a new mural in the nursery, a sunrise climbing over a quiet city, the doorbell rang. Claire answered it, holding Elias on her shoulder. Victor stood outside. His hands were shaking, his eyes red. I need to speak to him, he said. Claire didn't argue. She let him in quietly, handed him the child, and walked back out with a simple nod. Inside, Isaiah wiped his hands, turned around, and froze. Victor stood in the living room, holding Elias. Not like a billionaire, not like a man used to controlling everything, but like a grandfather. Small, quiet, human. He's perfect, Victor whispered. Isaiah's jaw was tight, his fists clenched. Years of rage surged like a tide, ready to break. But then Elias reached up, touching Victor's face with chubby fingers. The old man smiled, soft, broken, and Isaiah, exhaled. "Why are you here?" he asked. Victor sat down slowly, eyes never leaving the child. "Because I can't fix the past, but I might still have a hand in shaping the future." Isaiah didn't respond. So Victor continued. "I've spent my life building things that didn't matter. Towers, boards, brands. But this," he motioned to the baby, "this is legacy. This is what I never understood until it was too late." Isaiah sat across from him, cold, wary. "You call me a stain? You tried to erase me." Victor nodded. "I did, and I'll never forgive myself for that." Isaiah's eyes burned. "You don't get to rewrite yourself just because you're old and lonely." Victor looked down. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for accountability." Victor reached into his coat and pulled out a folder. Inside, a legally signed document, a notarized statement, a handwritten letter. He handed them to Isaiah. "This is a formal legal amendment," Victor said, "acknowledging paternity, transferring my inheritance rights, splitting the estate between you and Arabella. Publicly, permanently." Isaiah stared. "You're giving me half." Victor nodded. "Because you're mine, and because she is too. I built this empire by taking. Maybe I can rebuild it by giving." Isaiah swallowed. "And the letter?" Victor smiled faintly. "That's not for you. That's for Elias. Someday." Isaiah stood up, walked to the fireplace, letter in one hand, baby in the other. "You don't owe him money," Isaiah said, holding Elias close. "You owe him a grandfather who shows up." Victor blinked. Isaiah turned. "Don't send lawyers or gifts. Send time. Be present. Be kind. Don't try to earn your way in with cash." He walked back to Victor, holding Elias out gently. "Here, feed him." Victor trembled as he reached for the bottle. And for the first time in either of their lives, there was peace. Not total, not perfect, but peace. At the same time, Claire and Althea sat in the kitchen, drinking tea. The air between them was no longer awkward or cold. It was comfortable, lived in. "I never thought I'd see this day," Althea said quietly. Claire smiled. "Me neither. You were right, you know," Althea added. "About what?" Claire looked at her. "Letting love win." They clinked mugs and sat in silence. Later that week, a family reunion. They didn't call it that, but that's what it was. Victor, Claire, Arabella, Isaiah, Althea, Elias, together, under one roof. It wasn't about forgiveness anymore. It was about forward. They told stories. They shared old photos. They let the past stay in the past. Not forgotten, but finally laid to rest. And that night, around a modest backyard dinner table, Arabella looked at everyone, eyes shining. "This was never about a scandal," she said. "This was about choosing love, even when it's complicated. Especially then. Is it ever too late to heal a broken family? Or does healing begin the moment someone stops running and starts reaching? What do you think? Let us know below. 1 year later, the old Harrington estate no longer belonged to the Harringtons. Victor had quietly sold it, not in shame, but as a gesture, letting go of what was to make room for what could be. The marble, the chandeliers, the acres of emptiness, they no longer held power over him. He now lived in a modest lake house outside of Ridgeview, close to the water, close to peace, and most importantly, close to them. He visited every Thursday, not with gifts, but with stories, with walks in the park, with tiny, quiet gestures that said, "I'm still learning." Elias knew him not as Victor the billionaire, but as Pops, and that was enough. His studio was small, sunlit, and always smelled like paint. He'd just completed a series called Roots, a collection of canvases depicting fractured families finding their way back to each other. It was picked up by a regional gallery and then invited to tour nationally. But the only critic that ever made his heart pound? Arabella. And when she walked into the studio carrying Elias on her hip, cheeks flushed from the sun, he knew. He didn't need the world's applause. He already had his legacy. She'd started teaching art therapy classes for teen girls, girls struggling with grief, shame, silence. Girls like the one she used to be. Her story, the daughter of a billionaire who chose love over legacy, had been published anonymously in a magazine series. She didn't need the fame. She just needed to know that someone somewhere, would read it and feel seen. Arabella had found power. But this time, it wasn't inherited. It was earned. What began in silence had grown into something beautiful. They met every Sunday at the cafe near the flower market. The same one Althea once walked by on her way to work, always wondering what life looked like on the other side. Now she didn't wonder. She sat at the table, across from the woman who had once lived above her in every way. Now, they were equals. Claire had sold her jewelry line, started volunteering at a women's shelter, and told her story at fundraising events, always ending with one phrase. A mother's silence is never protection. It's time we learn to speak up. For ourselves. For our daughters. And Elias? He was walking now, one chubby foot in front of the other, wobbling with pride, arms outstretched toward the people who loved him the most. He didn't know about press conferences or paternity scandals. He didn't know about family betrayals or boardroom takedowns. All he knew was that every time he laughed, someone's eyes filled with tears of joy. All he knew was love. Pure, uncomplicated, undeniable. On Elias's first birthday, Isaiah and Arabella sat together after the guests had left, cake smudges on the table, balloons dancing in the wind outside. Claire had tucked Elias into his crib, singing an old lullaby. Victor had kissed his grandson on the forehead and driven off into the quiet night. It was just them now. Isaiah reached into the drawer and pulled out something he had kept hidden for months. The letter Victor had written, for Elias. He looked at Arabella. She nodded. Together, they opened it. To my grandson, you don't know me the way the world once did. And that's a good thing. I was a man who built walls and called them kingdoms. I hurt people. I silenced those who loved me. And I thought power was something you held, not something you shared. But you changed that. Not by what you did, but by who you are. You reminded me that legacy isn't about control. It's about connection. I hope you grow up strong. But more than that, I hope you grow up kind. Curious, unafraid to speak your truth, even when the world tells you to be quiet. And if someday someone tells you you're not enough or that your story isn't worth telling, remember this. You come from love, not perfection, not privilege, but love. And love always finds its way home. Pops. Arabella leaned her head against Isaiah's shoulder. He kissed her temple, and for a while they just sat there, breathing in the moment. The peace. The miracle, the one Arabella and Claire had planted that spring now bloomed in full. Petals fluttered down like pink snow as the family gathered beneath it for Elias's first birthday photo. Isaiah held him. Arabella kissed his cheek. Claire and Althea stood behind them, arms linked. Victor sat on a bench nearby, smiling. And for the first time in years, perhaps ever, no one felt like a stranger to each other. There were no more secrets. No more walls, just roots, just love, just the promise of a future built not on power, but on people who had finally learned how to choose each other. When love fights through shame, legacy, betrayal, and silence, it doesn't just survive. It transforms. What would you fight for if everything was on the line? Let us know below. Your truth matters. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you'll surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.